Yes, we did it. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our June Empower Hour, number 4. We are talking about safety on the farm. My name is Abriana. I am one of the district directors specifically for the Southeast. And I joined Empower Hour last year. And I'm super excited to bring to you a conversation that is going to have a wealth of knowledge. It is something that we have gotten a lot of feedback that people are concerned with. So we're hoping that the people we have here will shed some amazing light on any questions that you may have or things that you want to think about when it comes to safety on the farm. Just remember, this will be recorded. We will send this out to you after the session. It'll probably be tomorrow, where Ms. Christie will get that to you. And we will have several Empower Hours available to you very soon out on a brand new YouTube playlist so that you can go back and see something that you may have missed that we have covered in the past. This is a amazing value add as a member of North Carolina Agritourism Networking Association. So we're going to get this party started. Also, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat or even come off mute and we can share that with you, or you can share it with us. All right. And next slide. Okay. I just want to introduce to you 3 amazing people that we have today coming to share some knowledge. We have Elena Rogers with North Carolina State Extension. She is part of the fresh produce food safety, and she's going to focus on food safety on the farm. We've talked about in the past how to bring food on the farm, how to increase the average sales per person on the farm by bringing in food, and Elena's going to tell us how to do it right so that the public is healthy and we don't get anybody sick. Jim Ellerbe is coming in from NC Farm Bureau. He is going to talk to us from the insurance lens. And we all know that that is something that has been quite the discussion in the agritourism world. So write down your questions for Jim, okay? And then we have Nick Mooney here. He is not only part the second half of Millstone Creek Orchards with Beverly, but he is a retired attorney, and he is going to share his opinions that are not legal counsel. He is not here to counsel us on the law. He's just here to share his thoughts. So if you have to do a better disclaimer than that, Nick, please feel free before you start sharing.
Will do. No, I'm fine.
Awesome. Oh, and if you are watching as an NCANA member, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. I know we don't have enough time to go through everyone, but I do see some new faces. So feel free to drop in the chat who you are, where you're coming from, what your farm is, what your farm does, and any questions that you may have. All right. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see my questions, and we're going to get started. All right. So we're going to start this party with what are the non-negotiable safety measures every agritourism operation should have in place from day one, regardless of their size. Sometimes we get in mind, we see the really successful operators who have staff and teams and are operating all year long and have these big lofty operations, but there's some people who are just getting started and they're trying to figure out what is it that they even need to keep in mind. So could you all share what are those non-negotiable safety measures that they should have in mind from day one? and anyone can chime in.
I'll be glad to start.
Okay.
Okay, first of all, thanks for having me. Jim Ellerbe with Farm Bureau. Some people say insurance people take the fun out of everything. I'll try not to do that tonight when I talk with you. But I will be speaking to you from an insurance perspective, from a North Carolina Farm Bureau perspective. Please keep in mind that we do things probably a little bit differently than other insurance companies. All insurance companies have their own underwriting standards. I get a lot of questions about agritourism. One of the first things I will tell an agritourism operator is that communication with your customers or your visitors is really, really important. If you have school groups or church groups who are going to visit your farm on a tour, let them know what to expect. If you have animals, if you have a product that you're going to be serving, let them know, what to expect. The kind of clothing they should wear. If it's closed toe shoes or hats or sunscreen, those kind of things need to be communicated. So I think communication is really important. Another area that we see quite often where there's injury, in particular with children, or unrestricted areas. Your farm shop and your machine shop is one of the most dangerous places on the farm. So if that is an unrestricted area, somebody needs to be there to make sure that particularly children are not getting into things they shouldn't be. We highly recommend that your farm shop be a restricted area and not allow people to kind of wander around. It should be only in the areas that you want them to be. And the last thing I'll say is it's always who, what, when, where. Who's on your farm? What are they doing? Where are they? And what are they doing? So just keep that in mind. It's pretty simple.
Well, I'd say when you're looking at this from a little bit different perspective in terms of a legal perspective, I think there's a lot of things you need to do to be safe to yourself and then as well as safe to your guests. I mean, you need to make sure you understand and you know what you're getting into, and that it's not an easy process. You need to take that time to identify, what it is you're going to do. Like Jim just said, you got products, you got animals. And then from there start analyzing all the dangers that exist with that product. Now that takes a long time. Every day you go through it, you probably come up with another risk or another danger that can occur. Some you probably didn't think of at first, but that's kind of the way to start with that safety is you have to go with the assumption. I think Jim said that people think that farm is safe and the farm is not safe. It's a very unsafe place. And so it's kind of tantamount upon you to put them in a position that they understand they're not safe. I don't know that you'll ever solve people and they're still going to do unsafe things. That's going to happen, but at least you're communicating to them, like Jim said, what it is that they're doing. And so, I think that's that first step of identifying what your risks are, and then, identifying what can I do to eliminate or reduce those risks. You probably can't eliminate them completely, but you certainly can reduce a lot of them through signage, through warnings, through uh, petitioning things off, various ways to do that.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like what both of you all brought up is really, communicating the expectation. Jim, what you offered was having that communication in advance, right? Whether it be school field trips, like set the expectation for how much supervision the kiddos need, have chaperones. Whose responsibility is it to watch these kids in these particular areas? Because you can have a lot of signs up, but if the kids can't read them, we need to have those adults there to make sure that they're enforcing those directives. And that, like you said, Nick, even the agritourism signs, the ones that ANA have available, those are definitely a start to communicating that on-site expectation, but you still need to assess risk and provide additional signage when necessary. Is that what you're laying out for us?
Yeah, and those signs, I mean, that's a nice step. I mean, people need to understand, that's your first layer of defense. You better have a whole lot more. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's no magic bullet to prevent you from being sued. You just need to make sure that you do everything you can to identify all those risks that are out there and comply with the North Carolina agritourism law, and it is a strict kind of compliance thing. Um, and be prepared when incidents happen, how to handle those incidents. That's part of your safety concerns is, when things happen, then what? And you can't
Uh-huh.
just, you got to have that pre-planned. You got to kind of know what you're going to do because there's so many confusing things that can happen when something happens, where you're on the farm. I'm, I'm in the woods. Okay, we're going to get the ambulance there right away. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so there's a lot of those things you have to pre-plan and think about because when you're under the gun, those are some of the last things you're concerned with. So yes, start with the signs, but it's a multi-layered process for sure.
I really
Yeah.
like that, Nick, the having that safety protocol, like, so that everybody knows if you have a guest on the farm and there's an emergency, like already knowing what the steps are to do and making sure that all members of your staff know exactly what to do, right? It's not like just keep calling Nick until Nick answers, right? Like that's not a safety protocol, right? Like knowing like the proper steps there. And Jem, following off of what you said, as a farm operator here in Charlotte, we have found over the 8 years of establishing our farm from scratch, the communication between our Farm Bureau agent each year has been paramount to making sure that we have the right insurance policies, the right amounts on our general farm liability policy, the right amounts on our farm policy with NC Farm Bureau. So to Nick's point, like making sure you've got the minimum, like exceeding the minimum number of sides posted every single place where there's an agritourism activity going for guests. Um, but having that communication with your Farm Bureau agent and using the network to find out that as a UPIC operation, Farm Bureau actually has a very specific line item policy that not every agent knows about. But if you know to keep asking for it, you can find it because that's crucial to just adding layers of insurance. So as the operator, you're making sure that you're fully insured against all the what ifs that, Nick and I, through all our years of being part of Enciana, and Nick many more than me, that you're covering all your bases because ultimately that's what you have to do.
You made an excellent point. You can buy the best insurance policy in the world, but if it's not the right one, with the right coverage and the right limits, it's not done any good. So talk to your
Yeah.
insurance agent. Hopefully it's a Farm Bureau agent, but if it's not, talk to your insurance agent and they can provide you with guidance. That's an excellent point.
Yeah, and insurance in this arena is very complicated. And you kind of you got to be real careful what you're buying, what you're getting. Um, there's a whole bank of lawyers, they call them coverage lawyers that get involved over the specifics in insurance policies. And that's why it's real important to sit down with your agent and say, okay, is this covered? I mean, we had a small little incident where one of our trailers that was a roadworthy trailer was covered with insurance. I mean, we used to go get apples and things like that. Well, one of our guys damaged it while it was on the farm. He jackknifed it and bent the tongue. Well, you can't take that back out on the road, so it's kind of worthless trailer. We made a claim. Oh no, we're not covered for that. That happened on the farm. You're only covered if that happens on the road. So,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I'm not blaming the insurance company. It's kind of the way you got to understand what it is that you're buying.
Mm-hmm.
The complicated part of insurance in North Carolina, particularly in agritourism, is the agritourism statute, which gives you some limited liability issues, and the added benefit, if you will, of North Carolina being what's called a strict contributory negligence state. So if people contribute to their injury, they can't really be successful in their lawsuits. So it makes it an interesting analysis of risk that insurers get into, and unfortunately, it's getting more expensive as the days go on. As more people get into this agritourism business, I think the risks are greater because there's not as many people doing it right, perhaps.
Interesting. And so I think that kind of is a great segue into our next question. Like from a legal standpoint, Nick, what are some of the most common liability risks that agritourism operators overlook, and how can they mitigate that or plan better for them?
Yeah, see that, and that obviously depends upon the type of operation you have, but you really have to go through and assume that they know nothing. If you're in animals in particular, I mean, people, I'm kind of a city slicker, and somebody told me a pig was going to bite. Well, heck, then I'm not petting that thing. I don't want it to bite me. So you really have to assume. I mean, and I hope this isn't the wrong word, ignorance. That people are truly ignorant of the dangers that your particular product, your particular function, whatever it is, could expose them to. I mean, if they're riding on a hayride, yeah, it's going to be bumpy. You know, God forbid you're getting in there and playing with animals. Well, there's a plethora of things from sickness to injury, so it really is important to sit down and ask others. The greatest thing about the agricultural network is the sharing of information. Nobody keeps stuff, they share it. Find out from others that do it before you, and they'll be happy to help you get through that.
Yes, yes, that is definitely true. That is why we're here. Let's shift gears a little bit because I want to hear from Elena a little bit. For farms who are offering you pick or like food-based activities, what are some of those food safety standards or protocols that should be implemented to protect the guests and the farm?
Okay. So yeah, thank you for inviting me. And so like yes,
Yeah.
like you said, I focus on food safety, and food safety at the farm level from the moment, basically focusing on the practices from the moment you plant the crop or you start a year, like if you're growing apples, so the moment you sell them. So somewhat for the first thing I just want to say is that food safety should be non-negotiable. And it is not a topic that we like to talk about. Okay, it's kind of hard because what is food safety? And food safety basically means that we're providing a safe and wholesome product that free of microbial, physical, or chemical contamination to the consumer. What it means at the end of the day is consumers trust you, right? They come to you because they trust that what you're providing them is safe and it's not going to make them sick. So the first thing is like make sure that the food that you are growing, okay, that you are following practices. And the practices, a lot of times it's more about the way we do things rather than significant investments. Okay, it's more of establishing a food safety culture. So today we have limited time and we can't get into all the details, but I would say if you have not taken a food safety class, maybe this upcoming year, when the season's over, maybe we can do a class for your association and just talk about the things that would really matter for smaller operations, or where we're not really focused on. We can talk about regulations, we can talk about best practices, but what matters when you're at the farm. And so in that saying, or in that spirit, I want to say, the one of the most important things is to make sure that everyone who works in the farm has a food safety culture. So something food safety can mean like things as simple as washing your hands, or having good functional hand washing facilities that are accessible to people, or making sure that when you're growing the crop that you're using water that is of adequate sanitary quality. But like making sure that everyone who works on the farm is on the same page about the practices that we're following, making sure they are reasonable, and that they are some practices that are going to prevent problems. So I would say in today's world, food safety is a non-negotiable, and we really need to be thinking about the crops we're growing, and some crops are less risky than others. If you're growing blueberries, maybe a lot less risk than if you're growing greens. Okay, most I don't think I've seen any U-pick operations right for greens, but It's understanding it's really important to understand the basics about food safety so that you can manage your risk, so that you can put practices in place that really apply to your farm and to your operation.
Awesome. So, for example, something that someone might learn in the food safety class is, having a U-pick operation with a petting zoo.
Okay,
Maybe
so
not, maybe not that, right?
yeah, or separate. Well, and I'll use
Or
that as an
separated.
example. Exactly. Like so many times, like I work with growers. I work in the western half of the state in the Piedmont, but please call if not, if I can't help you. I mean, I have a counterpart in the eastern part of the state. But the bottom line is like there is always a way. And so, for example, if you operate a produce farm, okay, if you're growing blueberries or strawberries and you have a petting zoo, it is important that there's separation between those two activities, that there's good hand washing facilities, and that you have thought about the flow. Where are people going first? Should they go to produce first and then go to the petting zoo and then leave, instead of like doing it vice versa? Because you don't want microbial contamination. You don't want people's shoes tracking in, poop from one area to the other. Plus, for the most part, you have worked really, really hard on your crops. You want a high quality crop there, and you recognize, right, that when you have the public coming and, like, for example, picking from a in a field, they're going to probably be everywhere. So how do we limit access? How do we decide what is the flow? Where are people going to be on that farm? How are they going to move through there to minimize problems? And so that's an example. That's just one
Mm-hmm.
example.
Yeah.
Good hand washing, okay? Good hand washing is like simple, like, but having a functional hand washing station, having enough hand washing stations, those are things that are critical to make sure, like, that we prevent, like, for example, there have been some salmonella outbreaks in petting zoo, in farms that have petting zoos. So
Mm-hmm.
how do we put measures in place to prevent those things from happening?
Elena, could I ask a question about
Sure.
hand washing stations? Um,
Mhm.
I think it's small farms. How adequate, or yeah, I'm gonna ask it like that. How adequate are we if the best we can do is offer hand sanitizer? Does that at least get us partway up the ladder towards public safety,
Yeah.
food
So
safety, like versus having like functional soap and water, which I know can
Yeah,
be replaced?
so COVID really got us like thinking that hand sanitizer was like great, right? But the problem is that hand sanitizer does not kill bacteria in our hands. So it doesn't kill salmonella, it doesn't kill E. coli, it doesn't kill, like, other pathogens that cause foodborne illness. So, or that and that are transmitted basically from person to person. So we recommend that you have a good hand washing hand washing, and then you can offer like hand sanitizer. But what I was going to mention is that a hand washing station does not have to be a state of the art plumb station. It can be, I have some pictures I could probably show in a minute or when we come back, but just simple setups as long as you maintain them. To me,
Mm-hmm.
farmers have, like, you're really busy during the growing season. There are better things to be doing than to disposing of dirty bucket water, right? So anytime you can plumb a hand washing station, making sure that it's in a central location, making sure there's clear signage. You can't force people to wash their hands, but it is important to provide hand washing stations that have good signage that explains why that is so important, even though that is
Mm-hmm.
so basic. So I can show some pictures in a minute. Maybe we can go on with the conversation, but
Yeah.
that's
Are
hopefully that
there
answers you.
are
Mhm.
there any alternatives to hand sanitizer that are like portable, like either in the little towelettes that you
And
can
I was
offer
gonna
people?
add, Larry, I was gonna add too, that it doesn't have to be a plumbed event, just like with
Mhm.
temporary food service permits.
Oh yeah.
So
No, it's
you,
good. I've used the hose one before, like when I had my school group, but it's more just for that, everybody loves a quick convenience,
no,
right?
they do.
And
Yes.
to Elena's point, hand sanitizer is not the cure-all that we thought it was after
Mm-hmm.
No,
COVID.
agreed.
But you
But
know how they
maybe
have the little
different to
towelettes and they have
share.
like a
Oh,
foamy
this is
kind of
great.
pump hand wash that you can use? Do those help kill the bacteria and E. coli that we're hoping to kill or not so well?
You really need an abundant source of soap, and you need to, like, be able, you need soap and you need water.
Fair. And that's
I
the
can't speak to the towelettes just because we don't really use them in the industry because, and I
Right.
believe part of that might be that they're not as effective. I can look into that, but
Yeah.
I just briefly want to show you, like, obviously this is one unit that before COVID used to cost like $400 on my,
Yeah.
here on my, now I think they're closer to $1,200. Okay.
What?
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's ridiculous, right? How they gone up in price. Here's another one that was like, this is a UPIC operation, let me show you other, hold on. Here are other, okay, these are all hand washing
Okay.
stations. So this is
Oh, I
like
like
something you
this.
can build, right? Anyone can build this. The only
Mhm.
thing, again, my point goes back to the fact that you have better things to do during the busiest time of the year than to be disposing of the dirty water. But
Yeah.
if this works for you and you can afford this works, okay? The one thing we don't want is we don't want hand washing stations and bathrooms that look like this,
Oh
because
no, that's
this
awful.
now, right? But this is what ends up happening when you can maintain, when you feel like you can maintain something, you can't because you're too busy doing other things. So
Mhm.
that is
Mhm.
hopefully a good example of
That was not taken from a North Carolina farm, right, Elena? That's from out of state for sure.
so
Well, and Larry, I wanted to say to you at least that again, that no, those are the ones what she just shared the picture of, is that it doesn't have to be complicated.
Right.
Mhm.
Doesn't have to be complicated. There is a method to make it safe. And listen, we may have to haul off buckets of water, but if it's during our peak time, I know each of us, you and I are both growers, and that, okay, well, that would be something we just put into our day if it means keeping everybody safe.
Absolutely. And the takeaway there is it has to be soap and water. I mean, the end
Yeah.
all
No,
takeaway that we
agreed.
need to
so
get
but
back out. It's got to be
yeah,
soap and water.
it's
Yeah.
like soap,
Yeah.
like just potable water, soap. The water does not have to be hot, it can be room temperature, whatever. Make sure you have single-use paper towels and a trash can with a lid, because you don't want a lid, this paper towels going everywhere. I know that sounds super simple, but that is the heart of a food safety system. If you
Okay.
think of how many people come to your farm, they might be sick, and if they can't wash their hands, everything they're touching is like moving pathogens around.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
just wanted to add real quickly, I had to kind of, muse when I thought, you're doing a produce you pick up or, something like that and animals. That's where sometimes the best way to avoid a punch is not be there when you throw it. So you need to look and make sure that your operations match up because it's not, to me, it wouldn't be because I mean, and we've never grown produce. I mean, the exposures for that, you read about that all the time.
Mhm.
So if you were
Mm-hmm.
involved in that produce, that's where it's like, fine, if you're in horses and animals, then grow flowers. Nobody eats that. Um, to try to avoid those issues, because you're never, like you said, you're never going to get people to wash their hands all the time or anything like that.
Mhm. Yeah, you're
And I
exactly right.
just a comment from an insurance perspective, things that we see quite common with pick you own. I think Larry said you have a pick your own, so I wanted just to mention this. We see claims where pick your own will allow people to bring their pets, bring their
Mhm.
dogs. But what do people do? They rub their dog, everybody's rubbing the dog. And of course, goes back to the hand washing, cleaning the containers. They've been sitting in the sun. Sometimes they get contaminated. Wash those containers regularly. And then the third thing, be surprised about this one, food sampling. Food sitting out as
Mm.
samples, sitting in the heat for many hours of the day. We've seen some food poisoning with that. So those are the three things I just wanted to point out. Simple, but something that is pretty common.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Last month we talked about hiring on the farm, and that was a great conversation. But bringing that into the safety conversation, how do you advise preparing or training your staff, your team to uphold these safety standards that you're needing to put in place?
I can speak a little bit to that. So we do have a video, a really good video from the Produce Safety Alliance. That is the video that we use in the industry to train like workers and food handlers, like anyone who works at a farm. Obvious, because like please consider, and I will share the link with you so y'all can see it afterwards. But do consider, obviously, this is for commercial harvesters. Okay, we have some materials. I will share a couple of like fact sheets, but the reality is, like, think about how do those practices impact your farm. Like, so just recently talking about like containers, making sure not just that your workers are, have clean hands, that they have access to a bathroom, that they are not sick. But then, like, let's look at our harvest practices. What are we providing our, customers? Are we providing clean containers? Are we providing single-use containers versus plastic bucket, something reusable? What are we doing? So that video walks you through that, and that is a good tool. However, unless you adapt the video to your farm conditions and go over what are the expectations for your workers, it is going to be hard for them to implement things. But if you can merge those, that's just a great resource we have available.
Awesome. Nick, what does that look like at Millstone Creek Orchards?
Training of safety. Well, and Beverly and her gang do a good job, and we're fortunate enough to have repeat staff, but we meet twice a year, I think, that we go through and even going through the same scenarios, because again, it's so important that you think of them beforehand. And we learned some things, from the experts. We've invited the police and fire, and I think it was the police to talk to us about, you gotta, I know you all on radios, that's great, but if everybody's talking on the radio, you need to still communicate by phone. So there's some things that you don't think of, but no, we had a horrible situation where a young man who was a soldier thought that he brought his service weapon onto the property and lost it. And it was around Halloween. So all the kids are in costume, and we think we got a loaded weapon somewhere on our property in the playground area or something like that. And so thankfully we had not really, I can't say planned, but we kind of had identified, hey, if you have something like this, and we kind of put it into action. And, unfortunately, we never found the gun because fortunately the guy never brought the gun. So he never had it there, but it was to say the least, Beverly can tell you, it was a pretty intense situation. And I will tell you, we ended up having to call the police ultimately because we just weren't sure. And they found out that he left it at home, but they got on his case pretty hard too. It was scary.
And I would tell you, I mean, again, we don't, you hope not to have to run these kind of things. However, if you're not prepared, if you have prepared your staff, fire, a snake bite, somebody falls, of how do we deal if somebody collapses from heat? We play with it every year. And the beauty for us is our local fire and police department are so willing. They want you to be better. So it's a free service I think you already pay for. So to me, it's such an untapped resource. So we go back and forth, and I feed them every year at our training. So we do try to spoil them a little bit, but we go first aid safety. We have done CPR. We have done all of these different things to prepare us. But we did get to sadly have to practice it last year, and everything worked. And what the police taught us was that nobody's on walkie-talkies if you have a crisis, and that everybody, that way you have the walkie-talkie shut down except for the crisis, and you deal with the crisis. And we had to call that crisis last year, and it was for us, we were so delighted at the end of the day that we didn't have a threat, but at the time we thought there was a threat. And Nick's right, kids were dressed up like policemen, and so if they would have saw a gun on the ground, they would have not known the difference. And that was our true fear. And but it was very terrifying. But it does show training is important with your staff, because if you don't keep going through the scenarios, they don't know how to prepare for the scenario. So that was,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the other thing I was going to say, it also shows the lack of adherence to signs, because we have the big sign, North Carolina is an open carry state, so people are entitled to to wear their weapon on their belt unless it's posted. We're posted at the entrance. Rarely do we get people that bring them on, and but you have to be aware of those kinds of things. You may have that posted and whatnot, but if someone comes onto your property with a weapon, right, wrong, or indifferent. I love guns, but I'd rather I be the only one that has one. Um, those are the kinds of things, safety wise, you got to be aware of at all times.
I think a good takeaway, you go back to communication, and we use walkie-talkies here as well. And that's part of, right, staying completely like transparent with the team. They're all over our small farm. Um, but back to safety protocol, like I'll be meeting with the team first thing Tuesday morning and be like, if we are in crisis mode, like we'll politely say that on the walkie-talkies. The walkie-talkies need to be muted, and everybody with their cell phones, we've got to then go to text and no speaker, right? Don't call me on speaker. Because the thing with our walkie-talkie, if I make a call out on the walkie-talkie, to your point, like anybody in the pavilion with Jason is going to hear me call out on the walkie-talkie.
Right. And the last thing you want to hear is
Mhm.
we're looking for a gun. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Right.
yeah,
No, like,
yeah.
so I mean, it's all of these like minutia that you want to have well thought through. Like on the one hand, we're doing what Jim says, we're communicating as a team. We know what's going on. We've got the team like really circling around when they see something, but crisis and knowing then just even that protocol for crisis is phone only, like that could be a game changer, for an operating farm right there to keep a situation under control and managed and not
And
out
I
of
just
Mhm.
want to
control.
add
And
to that is I think that we all have to go in agritourism, that we prepare for the worst, but hope for the best. So
Mhm.
we have to be, and that's really for us sums it up, that we prepare for the worst, but we hope for the best. But we have to be prepared, because if not, I think it's crippling to us. And we talk about whether it's safety, whether it's liability, insurance. Us being trained is better for us, and it's better
Yeah.
for our insurance company or anybody else, but prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Yeah, I think training and safety is not only is it important for your guests, but it's important for your employees.
Yes.
Employer, you could be liable for the injury of an employee. One thing I always like to mention too, as a agritourism operator, you have to be the example to your employees. My daughter used to ride horses, and she would go to the barn, and the first thing she learned when she went to the barn, when you're in the barn, when you're around horses, you wear your helmet, you wear your riding boots. It's going to protect you. Well, being the insurance person I am, I just kind of observed for a few weeks if the rules were being followed. Guess who is not following the rules? The horse trainers. So if the horse trainers are not
Goodness.
following the rules, the students are. So as agritourism operators, set your rules, have your safety program, but also live them, do them yourself. If you do them, your employees will do it. And I think your customers, they have to believe they're safe. And if they believe they're safe, they're probably going to be safe. And after they have a good time at your operation, they're gonna go tell their family and friends, hey, I felt safe, we were safe, you need to go have fun at that operation. So
Yeah, that's exactly right. Modeling the behaviors that you want to see from not only your team, but your customers that you have on the farm. So, Larry, were you gonna say something? I saw you came off mute.
oh no, I just was like exactly
Mhm.
like I just this all I mean this is a perfect point, Jim. Like modeling is key and really having the conversations with the employees. And we've newly hired employees this year, so it's the first time we're operating with a staff, which is exciting for our business, but comes with all that extra responsibility. Um,
Mhm.
and and I'm the farm operator, but I also feel like the comptroller of safety on our farm. And so I'm
Mhm.
like keyed on everything, like everything
Yeah.
that's safety for both employees. For me, I can't afford to get injured because the farm's not going to run very well if I get injured. I need
Right.
Jason not to get injured. I need everybody operating all the equipment safely. I need all the guest experience to be top notch, 5 star. I don't want anybody to have any reason for complaint, and no one should ever be able to say I was negligent in anything. They can try to say it, but I dare them to prove it. Because I really take it seriously that, we run a safe operation here, and if
Mhm.
people feel safe, then they will hopefully act safe too.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, um, to lighten it up a little bit, we love to talk about how our farms operate, right? So, what are some of those best practices? We talked about managing the flow of people, managing what activities kind of go first, managing our like playground areas. What are some best practices that agritourism operators can take into their farms? I know it depends on what you're offering, what the experiences are, but high level, what are some things that you've done that have been like, yeah, as soon as we implemented that, life got a lot easier?
Well, I mean, I'll start there a little. The first thing we do in terms of particularly in areas where the children are, I mean, we regularly check. We built a lot of stuff, thank you, Pinterest, that we have all kinds of fun things around, but you got to kind of check them. And I know particularly in peak season, when we have tours out here, they hit that stuff pretty hard. So you have to make sure you're aware, look at that all the time to inspect it. Um, before things happen, and things are going to happen, particularly with children get hurt. They don't appreciate the risks, and that's where you have to think like a child, and that'll help you understand their parents sometimes, um, because they'll do things like run towards tractors or um, and you can't depend upon the parents to be the ones kind of regulating the children. And we tell our staff, if you see something wrong, I don't care if a parent's standing there or not, you got to go up there and stop that. Because I mean, we've had many occasions that parents are standing right there and somebody swan dives off of something, and you just want to go, what'd you think was going to happen? But so that's where it's real important that you tell your employees, again, not only do you inspect your stuff, but tell them to keep their eyes and ears open, and put those people in those places where you know things are going to happen.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Um, we see so many injuries where parents just kind of put their kids in the kid zone and left them. Age appropriate too. We see a lot of times where maybe teenagers are playing in the kid zone. They're too old for that particular area, and they maybe a smaller child gets hurt by a bigger child. Um, you really have to have your employees monitor that, and you can't make exceptions. If it's 12 and under, it needs to be 12 and under. Traffic flow was, I think, mentioned so important, particularly if you have parking on one side of the highway and your operations on the other side. You got to have, good flow across that highway, particularly with children again. So yeah, I think Nick's hit on some very good things, and just having your employees aware of who's there and what they're doing is very important.
Yeah, and parking is certainly, the general areas where most people have problems, I think, on their agritourism operations are in parking. And when they have equipment, either hay rides or trails or however they have those barrel things. The parking, because we're not Walmart. I mean, unless you guys got striped lots with big signs and things like that. I mean, ours are some rock road with a little bit of dirt here and there, and you got a bumper every now and then, and try to put some flags up. And I'll just say, from a experience standpoint, getting people to park where you would like them to park can sometimes be a very difficult operation. And there are many occasions that I just shake my head because I just want to know what they were thinking when they parked there, in the middle of the road. I mean, just places that you just can't even imagine. And those are probably areas, quite frankly, with your agritourism immunity, you may or may not have, real immunity in those parking lots. I mean, if you get a place that's a real danger zone, they keep getting in accidents and you don't do anything to fix it. Well, that could be a huge problem because that's not agritourism, that's parking. So those are some of the things you need to be very aware of because those are the places we don't expect it and it happens most often.
Yeah. Larry, is there anything that you've done on your farm that you've just either recently implemented or has worked very well for you as far as safety is concerned?
So we layer the safety, and I think every year we hone that layering of safety so that even before guests come to our farm, they've had to click the box that they understand the NC liability sort of blurb. It's simply to just start getting it out there. The write-up that they read before they come to the farm is the closed-toed shoes with socks above the ankle is a safety precaution against ants. I think that's our biggest thing as a U-pick operation in a farm field. We have ants, we treat for them organically, but there's lots of layering to get to that point, right? That's my biggest thing because it's like a bug sting or an ant bite. It's the little thing that can just spoil the whole experience for the whole family, right? If you've got a crying 2-year-old, then so making sure that in a very sort of calm, collected sort of but very open communicated sort of way, we need you alert, we know it's summertime, everybody wants to be in sandals, but throw those sneakers, throw those rain boots are great for little kids walking around the farm, gives you lots of opportunity if somebody gets into a little pickle to take care of it before anybody has any sort of ouch moments. But just each year just honing and then also training the employees with that same safety first. When we take guests, so we're by appointment, guests have to check in with us and then they are taken out into the field. Now they have to walk across the field from the parking lot to get to us. But that's that system of flow that we're talking about. Everybody knows to direct everybody to check in. So you check in first. We're a small operation and appointments keep us from being overwhelmed. And then as I'm training all our employees, because everybody needs to know how to take guests out onto the farm. And it's the 1, 2, 3, right? It's safety first. Safety first. The biggest safety here on our farm is ants and telling people where to look and how to be mindful for them. And it seems silly, right? But ants can be very discreet, and that's the word I'm like teaching them to use. It's not always the big ant mound is the one we can all see is that little discrete pile of ants hiding out right where you're going to step to cut flowers that's going to get us all into trouble. And then you being in sandals after I done told you 5 times you need to have shoes and socks on, right? And it's often more the adults than the kids. But that safety first, safety first, safety first. If you lead with safety, can you tell I'm the safety comptroller on this farm? It's safety first, safety first. And then I go off script. And then I turn around and say, but I can do that because I'm the chef at this farm. And I can go off script, but I know how to come right back around and do
Oh,
safety, safety,
gosh.
safety.
I love you, Larry. You're
But
awesome,
I mean,
man.
it makes the difference. Guess what? I can proudly say we're 45 days without ant bites on this farm, and I've got ants in my field, but it's because of all that grooming. So that
Mm-hmm.
people are just made aware. And I tell them, like we've got a little no drug, little suction cup bug bite thing. So if for some reason someone gets into ants, come see us right away. We can take care of that, put some ice on it, and then it's that caring. It goes back to if you're showing your guests that level of care and concern, they are less likely to throw a fit that my 2-year-old got bit by ants, right? Well, what do
Just
you
like
think,
that, same
right?
accent and everything.
We told you that we got ants in our field, and that's part of being on a farm.
Well,
But
I
we
have
don't
to
have to deal
say,
with that, you see,
we
because
love
we have been
Larry.
taking care of that all along through the customer
Right,
experience, which is agritourism. We're a
No,
U-pick
right.
farm, but we're really an experience farm because that's what agritourism is. You just
but
happen to
doesn't
leave
that
with
show
blueberries
us?
and figs and flowers and a lemonade and everything else we can put in your hand.
And that shows us too that our job is to educate. What you
Mm-hmm.
just said screams to me. It's our job is to educate and educate to keep them safe because we want to keep them safe on our farm, whether it's from an ant. uh, we could share that we had this huge bee problem last year, and it was if you go look me up right now, you look at my negative reviews, they're all about the bees. And it was during September, October. And then we looked, and they're not the bad bees, the yellow jackets. We want to kill them. It's the honeybees. And it was terrible. But I finally had to go because we got numerous bad complaints because they were so bad that we had to go to other people in our area that were other agritourism farms and go, are you having a bee issue? Okay, you are too. You are too. You are too. Okay, this isn't a me thing. So, but it's very challenging to keep them safe, keep them engaged, and not not pass up the opportunity to educate them along the way. So, Larry, you rock.
I love y'all too.
Awesome.
Uh,
All right, we've got about 8 minutes left. I want to make sure if anyone else has any questions for our guests, you're able to ask them. Elena, did you want to hop in and share something?
Yeah, well, one thing I was going to mention, I know I haven't seen it, but it does happen in the food industry, and that has to do with allergens. So making sure that, there's so many people with food allergies there. So if you are selling stuff that has allergens, that they are like, prominently displayed so people know that, okay? Or peanuts, or, we love those snacks and all that. But like nowadays, when you work with the public, you've got to be aware of that. The other one is like, I do feel like we in all produce farms, we like to have a really good first aid kit. And this is gonna sound so like, so it's important to have those all stocked, and before your season starts is the best time to do that. But one simple thing I tell people is please get like like the most colorful band-aids you can, because you don't want people losing their band-aids in the field, okay? And then you having to find it, that is not good enough food facility in any kind of area where you grow food. And then last but not least is like, especially with your kind of operations, is I would never give access to people to my entire field. I would really section it off. Because you never know if you're selling food to other outlets. You pick it's not your only outlet. Those other areas need to be separated from areas where the public has access to. The other thing I'm going to send you is a couple signs on like service animals. So we did do some through Rutgers University. We have signage up that you can post so that when people come to your farm, and if they have service animals, obviously service animals are welcome to farms. But here's like some language that you can use and that you can display so that they understand, so if you have a policy that you don't allow pets to come to your farm, at least here's an explanation of why that's not a good idea, right? From a food safety standpoint. But all service animals should be welcome, and that should be no problem. Those animals are trained and they should be properly trained. But again, so I will share those resources with you so that you can share them with the membership, and maybe you can post them on your website.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else? Erica, you want to share something?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to share just to really emphasize the importance of understanding your county's agritourism zoning exemption and making sure that your activities fall under that statute and you qualify for the liability protection. And then, of course, educating your staff, all of those preventative measures. The preventative messages that should be shared with your visitors, and a lot of the resources or a lot of the topics that you've all covered, you can find resources on safeagritourism.org. They've got some really good checklists, handbooks. There's signage that you can print out for all sorts of different activities, animal safety, hayride safety, inflatable rides, machinery. They've got some great stuff there. So it's safeagritourism.org.
Awesome. We'll be sure to include that in there.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, very good, Erica. So yeah, the one thing about those agritourism signs and to make sure you're in that compliance, there's no real definitive direction on that yet. There hasn't been a case that says exactly what is agritourism, if you will, and what is not. So it's real important to make sure you stay true to that agriculture. And in your posting of signs, not only do they have to be conspicuous throughout, you need to make sure you address who are your customers. If you have a tremendously large group of Hispanic folks that come to your farm, well, you're not going to get very far saying, look at all my signs, and none of them are in Spanish. So
Right.
that's where there's a lot of these things. And again, you're layering, waivers are fine. It's not going to keep someone from suing you, but it's more of the protections that maybe you'll discourage them. And the last thing I'd say about, safety, when safety has gone wrong and you have an injury, the documentation and the incident reporting of that occurrence is key. Because whenever some lawsuit happens, you're probably not going to remember the details. You won't remember who was there, and that's a whole nother. We could do a whole nother Empower Hour on incident reporting, in terms of that. And the last thing I'd say is, if it's great to have written policies and procedures and put all those things up. And if you have checklists of, when you're doing certain things, that's great. But it's important that you remember to document what you've done. If you fail to document what you've done, then you didn't do it. That's the old, it came from the medical profession. If it's not, it wasn't done. So if you create those, and it's kind of a double-edged sword sometimes, that you don't want to create these checklists and say, I was checking the bathroom once a day or twice a day or whatever it is. But people forget. You need to put something. My father-in-law, who started our place, we've got policies and procedures on pieces of paper that were laminated that are probably 20 years old now, because he was very good at that and provided that, and it's right there in front of you. You can't miss it. And I think that's real important.
I'd like to just add one last thing, that we see agritourism operations evolve from year to year. What started out was a hayride or a corn maze. In 2 or 3 years, they've added a lot of different operations. One thing I'd like to say is, if you're adding a new operation, please check with your insurance agent first, just to make sure that operation is going to be covered. The insurance company needs to know about it. And I see this a lot. Operators will begin to add higher risk operations as years go by to attract new customers. If you offer high risk activities, you will attract high risk individuals. Okay. And I would just warn that is what will happen. And you could lose your insurance coverages. You can open yourself up to a lot of liability if you offer high risk operations.
True.
We see that evolve quite a bit.
Great point.
Yeah, that is a great point. That is a great point. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for sharing just the wealth of knowledge. I know that, we had to go wide. We went about an inch deep. But I mean, really the key takeaway is ask before you do it. Ask your professional team, whether it be your lawyer, attorney, or your insurance. Find the resources for that idea that you have before you start doing the thing, and do it incorrectly or in a way that increases risk on your farm. And then communicate excessively. If you feel like you've said it too much or it's excessive, do it one more time for your team, for your customers, and for yourself. Because I mean, Erica knows in marketing, you have to say something at least 7 times. It's like someone has to see something 7 times before they buy it. If there are not 7 signs on the farm, people are not gonna realize. They're like, oh, you meant it. You meant it on number 8. Got it. Beverly, did you want to share anything else before we close?
No, I just want to thank everybody. And I will tell you, I am so impressed at the content that we're creating. And I really am excited to see future ANA members to get to enjoy this and learn from it. So thank you, Abriana. Thank you to all our experts tonight. You guys are awesome. Larry, you always make my life better. And then, of course, Erica, thank you. Erica is, you're amazing. So, no, thank you for doing everything you do for North Carolina.
Thank you, folks. Been appreciative.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you
for
all.
everybody.
you.
Thank
Have a
you.
great night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.